Yesterday, I unboxed the Canon EOS R8. I've had a day to use the camera and see what it can do, so this is my one-day review of the Canon EOS R8. It's not a lot of time to determine, so I'll be making some more videos on this camera and comparing it especially to the Canon EOS R7, because they're at the same price point. So let's talk about my experience using this camera in the past day. First of all, I've tried it with several lenses, the main of which is this Canon RF 50mm f1.8 lens. I unboxed this lens yesterday, so if you want to go check out that video, there's a link in the description. So I've used this lens with it. I've used my Sigma 70-200 f2.8, and those two lenses are full frame, so I was able to take advantage of the full frame sensor. I've also used my non-full frame glass, so this Sigma 18-35 and this RF 18-150. Now, something that I've noticed is that if you buy a lens like this and you put it on the camera, it will automatically crop in on the sensor, so you might not even know that you're not getting the full use out of the sensor. So make sure to double check that your glass is full frame and that the camera is not using a crop mode. As far as the camera recording goes, it's been amazing. The only gripe that I've had with it is the battery is not great because it uses LPE17 batteries. I really wish it used LPE6 batteries, but that's okay. Here's some sample footage I recorded with the camera at 4K, 60 frames a second, and I'm oversampling the 6K sensor. So this is what that looks like. I'd say it looks pretty good. Now, another thing with this camera is it doesn't have built-in stabilization, which is fine, but it does mean that you should probably use a stabilized lens. For most of this footage, I was using the Canon RF 50mm f1.8, which does not have any stabilization. So that footage is completely unstabilized, no camera in-body stabilization or lens stabilization. I did, however, slow the footage down to half speed because I recorded it at 60 frames a second. Unlike the Canon R7, the R8 can do 60 frames a second 4K oversampled, which is awesome. So you can get the full sensor at 60 frames a second in 4K. Now, one more thing about the recording resolutions, you can also do 180 frames a second at 1080p, and it looks pretty good. It's not too compressed, so that's great as well. Now, I was seeing some things on the internet about rolling shutter and how this camera fixes that for the most part. It is better for sure than the Canon R7, but it definitely is still there. So if you are going to be doing a lot of sports photography, make sure that you're using the mechanical shutter. But because this camera doesn't have a full mechanical shutter, it can only do 6 frames a second, unlike the Canon R7, which can do 15 frames a second with full mechanical. So that's something to consider. Now, the R8 can do 10 frames a second more than the R7 with electronic, but again, that's not with the mechanical shutter, so there can be rolling shutter issues. Now, as far as photos go, this camera has been awesome. Unlike video, you don't need to have stabilization for photos if your shutter speed is high enough. I've been using the mechanical shutter almost the entire time, so I haven't had any issues with rolling shutter or anything at all. So as it stands right now, I cannot determine exactly what camera is better for what circumstances, but if you're a wildlife photographer, the R7 is better. If you have any questions about either one of these cameras, the R7 or R8, please leave it in the comments below and I will answer your question. If you want to pick up these cameras for yourself, check out the Amazon affiliate links in the description below. That would really help out the channel. And please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Well, that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.